Ready to Learn Learning Triangle is a teaching tool. It addresses various learning styles and engages different senses. This workshop is based on these principles.
Welcome. Today we're going to talk about media literacy and what it means and how you can use it in your home, and especially how you can use it for yourself, because every home is a little bit different. So first of all, we're going to describe what is media. So anybody have an answer? What is media? Rachel?
Like newspapers, magazines, any way you get information.
Okay, any way you get information. I think today's society, we realize how much information is coming in all the time. All the time. In fact, we get it from our cell phones, we get it everywhere, billboards, any place we could get information is media. And I know that a lot of people are saying that instead of too little information, which happened years and years and years ago, we're getting too much. And so we're going to talk about what is media, specifically television, and how television is good or bad, or you hear things all over about no television, or how many of you have a television in your home right now? How many have a television? Okay, how many have 2 televisions in their house? Okay, and that's 99% of the homes in the United States has a television. Okay, so we're going to talk specifically about television as a media. So the next word, if we're talking about media literacy, is what is literacy? Anybody, any ideas what is meant? Okay, Melanie?
I know what it is, but it seems like a hard word to define.
Yeah, it really is a hard word to define, because most of the time we think about literacy and reading. But when we think about literacy in this sense, we're going to talk about literacy as understanding media. So how can you best understand it? A lot of us as parents, myself included, sometimes we just think, oh, if we don't worry about it, we don't have to deal with that. But the more we know, the more educated we can be, and the better we can make good decisions for our family. And once again, your family is different from my family. So how media influences my family might be very different from how it influences your family. So today we're going to talk about some ideas, how media is good, what ages media is good for, how it affects children, how it affects adults, and then we're going to come up with some good ideas of how to use media in your home. Now, these workshops are specifically for preschool children, and so we're going to talk about how they can help your preschooler get ready for school and how television can be a good influence. But first of all, we're going to start with some questions about what is media, how it affects children, and I want to hear from you, okay? So that's the first thing we're going to do, is answer some questions about television, and then I'm going to tell you the answers that research shows. Not my opinion, but what research shows television can be. Okay, I have 6 very simple questions. I want to hear your answers. I don't want any, oh, well, research shows. Let's just hear what you feel, okay? So these have just some statements. I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree. Tell me what your opinion is. So first of all, can television be harmful to children? Okay.
Yes, I think it definitely can. Not all of it. There are shows that are good and can strengthen and educate them or teach them principles you want them to learn. However, I think the majority of television is detrimental to them.
Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you not my opinion, because when I first heard this, I'm like, oh, really? Oh, and then I started adding up the hours that I watched. Research shows that if a person watches 9 hours of media, now that's including computer time, video games, any kind of media, over 9 hours a week, it is detrimental to your development. Now, we are going to talk about that children develop in 4 different areas. They develop cognitively, that's their reasoning skills. They develop in language. They develop socially and emotionally. And we all develop physically. If we're watching more than 9 hours of television a week or other media, then it has a negative effect on us. Wow. That's not very much when you start to add up a week. And for children, you have to really monitor that. And I'm just going to tell you about the physical aspect. Right now in America, one thing that we are very concerned about is childhood obesity. And a lot of it is because our kids are not as physical as we were as children. And so television, the video games, the computer games, all those kind of things make it so children might have that obesity. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, it's not that big of a deal for a child to be overweight. But it is very hard on a child's body. It's even harder on a child's body than an adult's body for it to be when they're obese. In fact, when they're 30% over their normal weight and they're growing, these muscles and those bones that are not developed could have some effect on them even as adults because of the weight. And there's a lot of, what are some obesity-related diseases? Liz, can you think of any obesity-related diseases off the top of your head?
Diabetes.
Diabetes. And we have heard that our children or your children have a shorter life expectancy than you because of obesity-related diseases. Now, that doesn't mean your child's going to die before you, but probably at an earlier age. And so one of the harmful effects of television can be because they're not physical enough. Now, the second question, it might depend on how old your children are. So I want you to think of this one. Most parents are aware of what their children are watching. Okay, Theresa, you have children, do you know?
I think I would strongly disagree with that, not because I don't try to monitor it, but I can't be with them every minute of the day.
Okay. How many, show of hands, maybe as teenagers you went over to a friend's house and watched something you may not have been able to watch at home? Did ever that happen to you? Okay. Happened in my house. There was a couple shows I'd say, not gonna watch, not gonna watch. And my kids would just happen to be at the house where they got to watch it. Now, I'm gonna tell you, as a parent, I should have changed some things to help maybe set some rules and better standards in my house. And that was maybe to sit down and watch the show with my child. Okay, and point out, why isn't this appropriate for our household? Why shouldn't we? I may have had to make a compromise and said, you know what, this isn't that bad of a show anyway. I want to watch it with you. Okay, and that's what I've done, tried to do a little bit better is, okay, so you want to watch this particular show, that means you can't watch this show today. And a lot of times I've noticed that when there's a lot of teasing and fighting in particular shows, I'll point out to my kids, you're doing the same thing. Why would I want to bring that in my home when you're doing it? I agree with Theresa. I know my own children, even my young daughter when she was very young, we send her over to the neighbors to play. And I could see all the kids outside playing and I couldn't see her. So I went over to the neighbors. Oh, she was watching television with the adults. They're having a great time. So even when we think we know what our children are watching, we don't always know. The younger they are, probably Liz probably knows that Leo's watching something, but as he gets older, it gets a little harder, doesn't it? Okay, now another question. Most children are capable of distinguishing fantasy from reality. Okay, Liz?
I think nowadays it's really hard for them to distinguish those two.
Okay, why?
Because they don't know. It's so funny to watch what they really think is fantasy and reality, and I see my son playing and I'm like, where did that come from? And he thinks it's real and it's not.
It's interesting that children, and I want you to sort of think of this because it's an interesting concept, until they're about 8 years old, they do not have a clear conception of fantasy versus reality. Now, I had a friend that took her daughter to a theme park, and at the theme park she would see these characters, and if they were dressed up she'd say, oh, that one's just pretend, Grandma. But if they were a real life person dressed up, she'd say, oh, that one's real. That person's real. Now, one thing that I want to say about this, and it's a little bit different, is commercials. You know, how many of us have been swayed by commercials? I have. I mean, there's a couple that I've been up late one night and I was watching an infomercial and I'm like writing down that 1-800 number because I knew it was going to work. And so for children, when we're talking about preschool children, commercials really influence them. The one thing about PBS shows, there's no commercials. When you watch an episode, you don't see a commercial. It is a very safe place for children to go because they're not always having to be influenced of, I want that toy, or I want this, or I want that. How many of us parents have had to change a present for a particular holiday because of a commercial at the last minute? And so, you know, I want you to really think of that is it's not until they're 8 years old that they have a clear definition. So Leo is where he should be. And children need that fantasy. Fantasy helps create imagination, which creates problem solving. Let's keep it a safe place for them. Now, this question, maybe 10 years ago, we wouldn't have even had to really talk about, but now I feel safe allowing my child to watch anything that's cartoon or animated.
Absolutely not.
Okay, why?
I've been going through and weeding my videos even lately, movies that I have, even Disney movies, where my children will be watching it and I'll hear something said and it's like, I don't want my children to repeat that. I don't want my child to try that activity. And there are lots and lots of cartoons. My children are at the age where they don't really like to watch live action things. It's the cartoons that keep their attention. And there are a lot of cartoons, a lot of them that I really disapprove of, and I do not want my children watching.
And exactly what Mary said was very important. Cartoons and those kind of graphics, we just automatically want to see. Not just children, but adults. As we're flipping through the channel, if we saw a cartoon, we're going to stop and watch it. And, you know, I know as a parent that my children would watch a cartoon and I'd think of the underlying theme that it was saying, and I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. We do know we have an adult cartoon network. It says an adult for a specific reason, but those cartoons are very appealing to children. And I think we need to be very, very careful when we watch that. Now, you have heard about studies that say that television can cause aggression. I watched particular cartoons on my childhood where people were getting hit on the head with a hammer or thrown over a cliff, and I never went and did that. But we do know, and I want you to think of your particular children, you have to know their temperament or their personalities, because children that have an already aggressive behavior, when they watch that on television, it increases that aggression. And so the more that your child is like that, then the more you need to pull back with those shows that are very aggressive. And, you know, once again, what is your personality? That's when we talk about media, to be very specific to each of you. That's where it really happens, is you need to say, what is my child's temperament? What is their personality? Are they aggressive? And when they watch a show, are they more aggressive? You might need to tone those shows down a little bit. One thing that I really like this little saying is, television is a tool. It's not the teacher. You're the teacher, and television is just your help. So remember that as you're picking shows. And remember, your kids are sometimes going to disagree with you. My very favorite quote, and I've seen lots and lots of disagreements about this quote. Theresa, I think I'll give it to you. Face it, television's a great babysitter.
I'm kind of in the middle on this one. When my kids were really young and Sesame Street or something like that was on, I'd put that on. That was my chance to have a shower uninterrupted. Yep. Or I would be doing the dishes, you know, watching them watch the show, kind of interacting with them. But I would not leave my child alone in the house with television as a babysitter.
Okay,
so
let's define a babysitter. Now, some of you may have been a babysitter before. I'm going to tell a story about my home with a babysitting experience. my third child, my husband and I decided to go out on a date. And so we asked my third son to babysit his little sister. And while we were gone, she was not being very obedient. And so my son said, if you don't be good, I'm going to duct tape you. Now, I have never said to my children, if you're not obedient, I will duct tape your arms together. Well, my husband and I were driving up, and my daughter can cry on demand. You know, I don't know if any of you have kids that can cry on demand. Well, my daughter can. And she heard the car pull into the driveway, the garage door go open, and I could hear her crying. Now, I went in there and her arms were duct taped to her side. And I said, what's going on? He goes, I told her 3 times and I have to follow through when I tell her something. So now, as a babysitter, my son was a babysitter, I have no control over what happens. Hope I have a little more, and we talked about we don't duct tape people anymore. She really wasn't hurt. I promise she was not hurt. But that's a babysitter. Let's substitute the word face it. Television is a great source of entertainment because you can choose. A babysitter you might leave rules for, and they might not always follow. But if it is a great source of entertainment, you can decide what the show is. As Theresa said, I don't know how many times I look forward to taking a 5-minute shower by myself while my kids watch Barney or some other show, so I could do that. And a lot of times I would still see the fingers under the door. Mom, what are you doing in there? But that's a great social entertainment. It can be. But once again, you need to be in charge of it. So we've talked about 5 ideas where television can be harmful, that parents don't really know what their kids are watching, that the cartoons are bad, that it can make them want to buy things from the television. My last question, Liz, is there anything good about television? Can children learn from television?
I think it depends on the program. My son has learned a lot of good things from PBS and KBYU from those things, but he's also learned a lot of other things from other programs on TV and movies.
Okay, and that is true. Mr. Rogers said real educational television takes place when the TV's turned off, and that's very true. I remember as a very young girl, the first time television had a real impact on me. Now I'm going to take you back. Some of you will never remember this. But I remember as a very young girl watching the first man land on the moon. And I remember watching that on a little television, black and white, and feeling a part of a country, feeling a part of, wow, I'm a part of something bigger. I drank an orange powder drink because I wanted to be like the astronauts there. And it really had an influence on me. I remember my children watching the Olympics, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Yeah, we'll get ready in 4 years. We can do that. But some television can really have a positive impact on us. And that's what we're going to continue over the next 15 minutes is how television can be educational in the 3 areas of children development. So we're going to just take a little break, and then we're going to pick up on how television can be educational and how you can use it with your own children. Okay, we're going to talk about how television can be educational. Now, there's a lot of different ways it can be, but PBS came up with a plan that's called the Learning Triangle. And we're going to practice that today, but I'm going to define it, how to use it, and how you can use it in your home with every show that you watch. Now, as we describe it, I want you to think of a cooking show. Have any of you ever watched a cooking show on television? Okay. And as you watch it, you go, wow, those brownies look really, really good. So you're viewing the television going, wow, I didn't know if I melted my butter, that's why my brownies. Now, I'm just making this up, so no one go there. But, you know, you're learning something. The next thing you do usually is you go to the internet, a recipe book, your iPhone if you have anything like that, and you look at the recipe. So you review it. So first you viewed it, then you reviewed it, and then what's the next thing, Allison?
Go and do it.
You go and do it. Which is the hardest part? Doing it. So you start doing it and you're like, oh, I wonder, I better go review that. Or maybe I'll need to watch that again to see how they accomplished that. That's my simple way of describing the learning triangle. Any how-to show you watch, you want an end result. It's not just viewing for entertainment, and you know, sometimes we do watch television for entertainment, but if we want it to have a lasting effect, we want to talk about that learning triangle. View the show, review the show, and then doing something with it. Now, in the next couple segments, what we're going to do is we're going to take that learning triangle, we're going to take some different themes that children use every day, we're going to watch some clips. We're going to review it with, guess what? Not a recipe, not the internet, but a children's book, because children's books have a lasting effect and you should have them in your home. Now, talking about books, one thing that we want you to know is you don't have to have 100 books in your home. They say about 14 to 20 books is a good children's library. So as you start getting books, try to find the shows your kids like. Does it have the same theme? That does not mean you need to go out and buy a book that's from that character. Just find a similar theme, and we're going to show that, how we do that today. And then we're going to do some activities where the real learning takes place, just like the cooking. Imagination, that's something children use every day. And we're going to talk about that in other workshops, but we're going to talk about it today of how television can spark imagination. Like I said previously, I know my kids have watched the Olympics before and thought, oh, I'm going to do that. Or how many of you have watched a show and thought, oh, I want to do that. Or I wonder how they've done that. Any of you have done that before? One of my children would watch Mr. Rogers, and he would learn a lot. And he was the one that would never sit still. But at half an hour a day, he would sit, and he would learn so much, and his imagination would get going. We're going to watch a clip from Sesame Street, and this is Robin Williams, a very young Robin Williams, and he's using his imagination just using a stick.
Oh, hi, Mr. Williams.
Hi, Elmo.
What are you going to do with that stick?
Oh, Elmo, there's lots of things you can do with this stick. You can start off, you can be playing baseball in the World Series. Hit it over the fence and realize, I'm the one. Or maybe you can be playing hockey. Shoot at the goal. Be the goalie. Oh, I saved it. I saved it. Oh, maybe you can also be playing basketball with Manute Bol. Yeah, and you dribble past it and score. Yes! Or you can be at the Olympics throwing the javelin. 800 yards. Oh, or you can be doing incredible things like while riding a horse through the pass, leading all the wagons through, or it could be a cane, and you're dancing around with Tommy Tune. Okay, or it can be a conductor's baton. Thank you, Judy and Sissy, for that lovely Rolling Stone melody. Or you can be at the head of the parade, or you can be an English officer marching for no reason around, back and forth, or you could be playing pool right now, shooting that side ball right in there, ping, or you can be Gene Shalit or Pinocchio. I have 2 Academy Awards, Elmo. Things like that. Most of all, the best thing I could do with this stick is give it to you.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
You got it, Elmo.
Now what is Elmo going to do with this stick?
Give your kids that stick. Let them play with it. I love the one where he's playing basketball, because I know that my kids would watch a star on there and then go out and pretend, I'm going up for a 3-pointer, and he shoots, and then he starts all over till he makes it. So that imagination, it can spark it. Now, I'm going to have you use your imagination during the review with the book and the do part. We're going to combine those right now, okay? So you're going to use your imagination. You're going to become an illustrator. Allison, what's an illustrator?
Someone who draws.
Okay, someone that draws. Any of you here think of yourself as an illustrator? No. No, I know when I first did this activity, I'm like, I'm not doing it. I can't draw. But I promise, can you guys draw like this? Very, very simple, just little squiggly lines. I'm going to give you some hints. Now, you each have a piece of paper and a crayon. Now, it might not be a purple crayon, but it's a crayon. And I'm going to have you use your imagination, and I want you to draw what you hear me say. I'll show you the pictures for the first couple pages, and then as I read, you draw what you say. What I say, you draw. You become the illustrator. And we're going to make your own picture of Harold and whatever color crayon you have. Harold and the purple crayon, by Crockett Johnson. One evening, after thinking it over for some time, Harold decided to go for a walk in the moonlight. Oh, there wasn't any moon, and Harold needed a moon for a walk in the moonlight. Oh, yeah. And he needed something to walk on. So he made a long, straight path so he wouldn't get lost. And he set off on his walk, taking his big crayon with him. He didn't seem to be getting anywhere on that long, straight path. So he left the path for a shortcut, and the moon went with him. The shortcut led Harold White to where a forest was. And he didn't want to get lost in the forest, so he made a very small forest with just one tree. And it turned out to be an apple tree. The apples would be very, very tasty, Harold thought, when they got red. Oh, so he put a frightening dragon under the tree to guard the apples. Now, I'm going to pause here to give you a second to draw your frightening dragon. Because it was a terrible, frightening dragon. It was so frightening, it even scared Harold. And he backed up, and his hand holding the purple crayon shook. Okay, I'm going to just stop right there. But did you notice the only thing we could hear was crayons on paper? Okay, I've used this activity a lot with 3-year-olds. I've given them just a little chalkboard with some chalk, and I've just said, now while teacher tells a story, you draw. And most of the time it's just circles or it's just little scribbles, not just scribbles. And then I'll tell them to tell me the story, and they will. Now, there are some kids that, I can't do it, teacher, I can't do it, right? Okay, and some of you might have that problem, but you can just say, well, just draw anything and then tell me what you hear. This is a great activity for kids to really get them to focus on what you're hearing. Now, I want to see some of your pictures and see some frightening dragons. Oh, this is Allison. This is a very good frightening dragon. Wow, that would frighten me. Now, does it have a smile on its face, though? Yeah. It's got a smile on its face. Now, this is when I did this activity. This would have been my picture. One tree, but in a forest, an apple tree. So you had to put the apples, and then it looked like a Christmas tree with ornaments. Okay, so could you guys go home and tell your story? Let's see, with Melanie's, okay? A long, straight path, the moon, shortcut, tree, frightening dragon. Right there's the whole story, okay? And that's imagination. That's the learning triangle. As you can see, you can use television to help spark your child's imagination. Remember, it should not end with the viewing, but you should review it and then do something that will actually help a child think about, what can I do once I've seen that show. Okay, now we're going to talk about how television can actually teach your children that's educational, something that they're going to learn in school. One thing that we know that children need to learn is sequencing, and that's putting like things together, or one thing follows another. And we're going to talk about putting like things together. So we're going to watch a clip from Sid the Science Kid where he's taking a season and he's putting together what actually goes in the season. Now, Sid is not from the cold weather, and he's sort of afraid to go to a winter weather for Christmas, but he starts thinking of all the things that he can do. So as you watch this clip, look and see what like things go together.
Tell me about your day.
Well, we learned all about temperatures, and now I know that it'll be fun to go to Minnesota and celebrate the holidays, as long as I wear my warm clothes.
Oh, you got that right. Nah. Winters in Minnesota are fun and snowy. In fact, my best holiday ever was once right before Hanukkah, when it started snowing and snowing for 2 straight days. Yeah. When it stopped, there were 37 inches of snow on the ground. That's a sit-high pile of snow. We went sledding and made snowmen and even built a snow fort. It was great. I celebrated the holidays with my family and friends and the most snow any of us had ever seen. Nah.
Wow. Well, do you think there'll be that much snow when we get there?
Oh, I don't know, but we can hope.
Yeah.
Nah.
My grandma tells the greatest and snowiest stories ever.
Okay, you know, when you look at that clip, you wouldn't say, okay, that's a sequencing or a sorting type of show, but it really did put those together. Now, one of my favorite books, and this book is a little bit for an older child, but it's a great read out loud book, is Junie B. Jones Has a Peep in Her Pocket, and it's by Barbara Park. Now, Junie B. Jones has a fear of a certain animal, and she goes to school, and her teacher has just one request. Now, it's a very simple request, but she doesn't define exactly what she wants, and so let's see how much trouble this class gets in. That day at school, Mrs. told us to draw a picture about our trip to the farm. She said to make it a colorful picture of what we wanted to see there. I drawed and drawed, plus I colored and I colored. And when we all got done with our pictures, we sat around in our chairs in a big circle and we told each other what we drew. My bestest friendess Lucille went first. She drawed a picture of a pink flamingos. Flamingos are my favorite animals, she said. That's because pink is my favorite color and flamingos are pink. And I have a pink dress that will match perfectly, so that's the dress I'll be wearing on the field trip. She wrinkled her nose real cute. Pink brings out my natural blush of my complexion, she told Mrs. Have you ever noticed my satiny skin? Mrs. looked and looked and looked at that girl. You're a fascinating child, Lucille. I'm afraid there aren't any flamingos on a dairy farm, she said. Lucille looked surprised. So where are they? She asked. Well, flamingos can be found in a lot of places, said Mrs. South America, for example. Louise shrugged her shoulder. So fine, we'll just go there instead. Mrs. said for Lucille to please sit down. Then came Polly Allen Puffer, springed out of his chair. Look, teacher, look, I drew a catfish, he said. See his whiskers? My brother says catfish whiskers are so sharp, they'll slice your finger to the bone. Mrs. made a sick face. Well, thank you for sharing that, Polly Allen, but we're not going fishing. We're going to a farm, remember? Polly Allen Puffer looked upset. Yes, but my brother said there's lots of catfish farms around here, and so that's what kind of farm I think we should. No, Polly, no, said Mrs. We're going to a regular plain old farm with regular plain old farm animals. Polly Allen Puffer did his mad breath. He said a big whoop. After that, Polly Allen Puffer had to sit in the hallway. So Mrs. did some deep breathing. Please, children, please, did anyone in room 9 draw a picture of a regular farm animal? Anyone at all that I'm looking for here? Just a regular farm animal? I did, Mrs. I yelled really excited. I drew a picture of a rooster under a tree. Oh, Junie B., thank you. That's perfect. I holded it up so she could see it. See, Mrs., see how pretty it is? Mrs. looked at my picture. Well, yes, that's a very nice tree, Junie B., but why is the tree lying on its side? Oh, it crashed over in a rainstorm, I said. Oh, said Mrs. Oh, dear. She looked even closer. But I'm afraid I don't see the rooster, honey. I pointed. There. See on the foot of the branch? He didn't get out in time, apparently. Mrs. covered her mouth with her hand. Just then a girl named Charlotte hollered, I hate that picture. That's terrible. I crossed my arms at that girl. You would not say that if your head was a snub, sister. I said. Meanie Jean laughed really hard. Then Mrs. said for all of us to take our seats back at our tables, and we did not show any of our farm animal pictures anymore. Okay, so what were they missing? What farm animals were. That was the sorting or sequencing. Now in front of you in your bag, you have a sequencing puzzle. We watched a clip with putting like things together. We read a book putting like things together or not the right things, and now you're going to make an activity of putting farm animals compared to zoo animals. Now on yours, I've made my puzzle already. What you're going to do is you're going to take your two square puzzle pieces and you're going to put your farm and your farm. You should have a little barn right there. And then you'll have 8 pieces, circular pieces that go around that, and you're going to put all the farm animals on there. Then you're going to turn it over and put your little zookeeper right there and put all the zoo animals. This is what you can do with your children. One puzzle you can do, okay, let's find the farm animals. Then the next one you can find the zoo ones. Or you could do both puzzles at the same time. This is a very good extension of what goes on a farm, what goes on a zoo. You can do this for different things too. What is a fruit? What is a vegetable? That's where you're starting to sort and put like things together. So go ahead and make your puzzles. If you have any questions, I'm here to help. As you can see, you can find great educational tools. Once, like we said before, television can be a tool to help teach your child. Go to our website, kbyu.org, and find the shows that are appropriate age for your children. Find activities that you can do for them, because it can be not just entertainment and fun like we watched with Sid, but it also can be educational. As we think about the last area of the learning triangle that we're going to do today about how television can have an influence both positively and negatively in our life, it's our social and emotional development, and especially for young children. Social is how we feel about other people and other groups of people, and emotional is how we feel about ourselves. Does television have, Allison, a big area of how we feel about groups of people when we view television, do you think?
I think it does.
Does it categorize some people, do you think, as we watch?
Definitely.
Okay. The one thing that I have found with my kids is that there are some really good shows on PBS that talk about emotional development, how they feel about themselves, and how that they can feel good about each other too. Some shows like Sesame Street are going to deal with all the different areas of development, the cognitive, the language, the social and emotional, the physical, where other shows that we see are going to just deal with like Clifford the Big Red Dog or Arthur really just deals with specifically social and emotional issues. I know that in our society right now that television really views males as not so smart. And that's sort of sad to say. I've seen a lot of commercials on television where the males are put down. And we need to make sure our boys and our teenage boys and our men know that they're just as good as women. It seems like we've had that pendulum swing, haven't we? And so we need to be very careful how we do portray people and make fun of them. In this clip, it's interesting because this is not normally a show that you would take with a social emotional group, but each character in the show world, and that's hard to say, as they each have their own personality. And so in this clip, they sort of share a little bit about themselves, what things that their personality brings to the table, what they like about themselves, how they can help a group grow. So we're going to watch just a little opening clip about Word World.
Meet the Word Friends.
Oh! Ready or not, here I come!
There's Sheep. Shy, demure, self-effacing.
I don't think I can do it, Aunt.
But when there's a problem to solve,
I had better go down there and see if I can help.
She's
Detective Sheep. Sheep. I'm bad. You know it.
Then there's Frog,
In theory, my idea should work.
the brain of the group, who's the voice of caution in chaos.
One of us should definitely take care of it.
And with silly, impetuous Duck living next door, chaos is never far behind. And Pig,
Bonjour, mes amis.
who's all about enjoying the moment. Luckily, Pig's best friend is Ant.
Here I am. A-N-T-N. You may be small, but you're the biggest friend I'll ever have. No.
And who could forget Dog, a word friend's best friend. Word World.
I love this show.
The end.
All those characters come together to make just a little society almost, and they're shy, impetuous, chaotic, but they all bring something good to the table. One of my favorite books about social and emotional development is by Nancy Carlson. It's called I Like Me, and there's a couple things I'm going to have you repeat with me as I read this. I have a best friend, and that best friend is me. I do fun things with me, and I draw beautiful pictures, and I can write fast. I can read good books with me. I take care of myself. I brush my teeth, I keep clean, and I eat good food. And when I get up in the morning, I say, hi, good looking. Okay, I want you to play like you're up in the morning, looking at yourself, and you're going to say, hi, good looking. Okay, so wait. When I get up in the morning, I say, hi, good looking. Very good. I like my curly tail and my round little tummy and my teeny little feet. And when I feel bad, I can cheer myself up. And when I fall down, I can pick myself up. And when I make a mistake, I can try and try and try again. No matter where I go or what I do, I'll always be me. And I like that. I hope that television you can find shows that encourage your children to like themselves, even if they're different. Now, the activity with our learning triangle, we watched a show about liking ourselves or social growth. We just read a book, and the activity we're going to do is a little fun. You're going to take the postcard that's in front of you, and you have some stickers so that you can decorate it. And you are going to write a postcard to somebody that you love. And I want you to say one thing that you love about them. Now, if you're like me, most of your writing comes through email. So a postcard might be a little different for you. So when you look at it, where it says to, you're going to write their name. Up here, you're going to, now you need their address too. We can't send it to them unless you have their address, okay? And then you write from, right here you write your message. So I just want you to write one thing you like about your child. I like your smile, or I like your giggle, or I like that you help clean your room when I ask. Those kind of things, telling your child why you like them. How many of your kids like to get the mail and it's never for them? I know my daughter is like, is there any mail for me? And it's not. It's usually just those bills that pile up. But today you're going to write to somebody that you love. Now, if you don't have a child, what's really fun to do is write why you're excited for them to come, send it to them, and then put it in their baby book because it will be their first letter that they get. Now, as you're doing this, I just want to wrap up and talk a little bit about media. How media can be that educational tool, that you can use it in your home. When you watch it, sometimes it's just entertainment. Sometimes you just need a break. But if you want it to be educational, we really would encourage you to add those different parts of the triangle. View it, review it with a children's book, and then do an activity. The activities don't need to be hard, but as you're doing an activity, follow back on, did you remember when we saw? Or as we watched this, do you remember? Help them understand that learning. Television in the United States has a big place. As we've mentioned before, 99% of the homes in the United States has at least one television. We would really discourage you from putting a television in a child's bedroom. and so that you can have a little more control over it and they're not watching more than 9 hours of television. But it can have a very positive role, but you'll be the influence of that. And so as you take television, just do this simple activity, the view, review, and do, and you'll see great success in your home.